Welcome to the Uncontested Investing Show, presented by REI Inc. magazine and sponsored by RCN Capital. Each week, we focus on bringing you candid convos from the best in the biz. Here's your host, Tim Harridge.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Harridge. Thank you so much for stopping back by. Today, stand and salute Colonel, retired, Ted Studdard. Ted?
It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. So, I just kind of start everything. So, audience, just so you know, today, I don't have to explain all the Marine Corps stuff that I normally talk about. I always just kind of let people start off, just tell the audience about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
So I always wanted to be a Marine, probably just like you. And my dad was a Marine. My uncle was a Marine. In fact, my uncle fought at Guadalcanal, Peleliu, and New Britain. So as a Marine, you know the significance of that.
Yes, sir.
Neither of them talked a lot about being in the Marine Corps, but they were so proud to be Marine. And I just wanted to be a Marine. I didn't care where I went. I didn't care what I did. I could have peeled potatoes as long as I was a Marine. I just wanted to be a Marine. So I skipped school one day, signed up, and as soon as I graduated from high school, I went to Parris Island. And from Parris Island, I ended up going to the University of Georgia. And you can appreciate this. First week I'm there in Georgia, I'm a PFC. And I see this other Marine walking across campus. I'm like, I need to go say hello. And as I got a little closer, I could tell he was a Marine officer. And he was the officer recruiter. He said, you know, what do you do? And we had a little conversation. And he said, would you like to be an officer? And I thought, you know, right now I'm a PFC. That's an easy question. So, yes. So I ended up going through officer candidate school and then serving in the Marine Corps 25 years as an officer, and never intended to do more than 4 years. But it just turned into a career and a way of life for me and the family.
And what do you do now?
Well, I just after retiring from the Marine Corps, I spent nearly a decade with corporate America, with Home Depot, in a number of different positions there at the corporate headquarters. And we just started our own consulting firm, focusing on helping people align their values with their vision, their planning, and their execution. Company's called the Studdard Company, so a real original name there.
Very good, very good. So, Colonel, the first thing we do every week is the bottom line up front, the bluff. And as an intel guy, they always said, you don't bury the lead. You come out with the most important things in case the CO has to get up and leave the room. So I start with the bluff because I want to share, in case someone pulls over to get gas or whatever and forgets to turn the thing back on, kind of the most important things that you think people should be doing in today's market, things they should be focused on, maybe things they should be avoiding. And in essence, we're going to summarize what we're going to talk about for the next 30 minutes so they get the bottom line up front. You ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
The bluff, the bottom line up front is take care of your people. When I say take care of your people, develop. You know, we talk about developing people so much, but how often do we really do it? You know, and if you think about developing people, you can really put it into 3 categories. Level 1, helping people with their current job. Level 2, helping them with their career. But I think really as leaders, where we have an impact, is level 3 leadership, and that's developing people holistically, not just in their job today, not just maybe in their career, but helping them develop as people. And we talk a lot about that, but I think we're missing the boat a lot, that we don't put our money where our mouth is sometimes. And the second part of that is not just developing people, but incorporating this tremendous talent that we have on all these teams, and incorporating it into the planning, incorporating them into the execution, incorporating them into what success is. And if you can incorporate that talent into your team, I think you've got something absolutely unbeatable.
So that's excellent. It reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife last week. We were talking about, I'm the executive director of RCN Capital, and, you know, one day we'll exit the company in some way, shape, or form. And she's, well, what's next? I said, I don't know. I'll probably be a board member or angel investor for some group, or who knows, may start another company, just who knows. And she said something like, well, the way you're acting, because I'm still a little bit of a sergeant, you know, I go out to these places and I network, you know, sometimes till 3 a.m. It's just Tim Harrod's trait. She goes, well, the way you're acting, you'll never be the chairman, you'll never be the board member because they don't want someone to act like that. And I thought it was, you know, wife being the wife. But then the more I thought about it, I remember back when I was a young Lance Corporal, one of my staff sergeants showed me that he wore gunnery sergeant insignia underneath his, not lapel, out of the pocket cover. What's it called?
Well, pocket cover worked just fine.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And he said, I'm always wearing that because I need to feel like the next level and be focused on the next level. And every day I need to try to act like what I want to be, not what I am. And when my wife said that to me the other day, all I could remember was that first time that staff sergeant told me that, and I bought that first set of corporal insignia and put them underneath those pocket covers. And it was just amazing. Number one, I felt like an imposter at first. But then it did start to change the way I acted, the way I thought. And so when I heard you say that, building people up, career pathing them, I think that's something entrepreneurs miss a lot.
I do. I think that, you know, we get so caught up on the here and now. I've got to do something. I got to get it done, get it done. We forget about developing those around us. I'll tell you a funny story. Young lieutenant getting ready to go into combat for the first time. We're about to cross the berm to go, you know, Saudi Arabia into Kuwait. And as we're preparing, I've got a small group of an advanced party that we're taking forward. And as getting everything ready, our battalion commander comes up. I've got myself and my driver. I've got a machine gun from him, a machine gun from me. We've got pistols. We've got grenades. We've got every kind of weapon you can think of in the back of this Humvee. And he looked at me and said, what in the heck do you think you're doing? I said, sir, I'm ready for anything. He said, put all that crap back. He didn't say it that nicely. Oh, no. Put it back. And he looked at me and said, I don't need you pulling the trigger. If you're pulling the trigger, there's a problem. You need to direct the trigger and the fire of that entire platoon. You don't need to be part of it. You've got to direct it. And I think that's so valid as entrepreneurs or any leader. You know, we gravitate to doing things. We're doers. But if we can get all those other people doing, think about how that exponentially raises what we are capable of accomplishing.
The old, if you want it done right, you got to do it by yourself is, I guess what you're saying is really if you just believe you're a poor leader. I mean,
there you go. You know, think about, you know, all the talent that you have in real estate. What if you could teach 5 people to do exactly what you do? Just think about how that just multiplies the value. It's just incredible.
Well, as a former NCO, I was a sergeant when I got out. I am just such a huge believer in small unit leadership and in delegation because, as you know, nothing happens without delegation in the world we come from. And I actually find myself teaching people at my current company and at other companies about the fire squad system or fire team system. And ultimately, you know this, but a lot of people don't. The way the Marine Corps is set up is very much like it's a Napoleonic type concept. And, you know, we've got our 4 MEFs and, you know, we got our 4 divisions and we got our, you know, it's like everything's 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 till you get down to the fire team level, which has 4 Marines in it. And I talk about that a lot at our company because if my chief financial officer is talking to someone about a wire, like either A, we need to hire more people in between him and that person sending the wire, or B, we have to tell them you're not allowed to do that. You need to, you know, it's the same thing the battalion commander said to you, right? And we're all guilty of it, though, right? I was telling the CEO the other day, I said that the first thing we need to do this year is we need to make it where you don't read the info@rcncapital.com email address anymore. He goes, but I love to know what's happening at my company. I said, well, the problem is now that tells the CFO, the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, the COO, and the CMO, they better read it too, because they don't need you knowing something they don't know. Well, then that tells their VPs that they got to read it too. And next thing you know, we got 300 people reading the same email. And so I'm very funny you start out with that, because also if you boil our audience down to the house buying team, you've got the acquisitions manager, the dispositions manager, and you've got the lead manager, and you've got the entrepreneur. And so many of them start doing all of those functions, and you see real success once they get, I'd say, 2 levels of delegation and leadership. But a lot of them really struggle on getting there.
Right. You know, we tend to go up, and I think sometimes we discount ourselves as we move up that chain as leaders. And it's scary. It's hard to take that next step, and there's always that, am I ready, et cetera, et cetera. You are. You're there because you've got a capability that nobody else has. But shame on you as a leader if you are not doing your job. You're doing somebody else's. And so, you know, as we grow as leaders, there's a learning curve that goes with that. You have to, I think, learn to be a leader, and you have to learn to trust. You have to learn to delegate. And I think with that delegation comes trust. And I don't think we talk about trust enough. You know, when I say, hey, Tim, go do this, I'm saying, I trust you to do it. And it's incumbent upon me to make sure you're trained, that you know what to do, you're taught how to make decisions, and you know the why. But I trust you, man. Go do it. There's no bigger compliment that I can give you than to say I trust you and then to live it.
You know, I think one of the things I like about what you're doing is leadership is not a talent, in my opinion, as much of a skill. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with it. You know, I think are leaders born or not? You know, there's this big debate. And some folks are born with what you might think are great leadership qualities. Maybe they're outgoing. Maybe they have a physical presence, whatever. But leadership is a learned skill. You have to make mistakes. You have to learn from others. I think you learn, obviously, by doing. You learn by reading. You learn in formal education. And I think you learn a tremendous amount through mentorship.
Right.
And having people share with you their wins and their losses. And I think it's another great opportunity for us as leaders is to put our arm around somebody and say, hey, come on, let me help you.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I really want to talk about some leadership traits, maybe some principles. You see where I'm going with that? But then also, I want to pull as much advice out of you as I can about how entrepreneurs can start implementing leadership training and success in their company. You go. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for fast funding for your next fix and flip? What about leverage for your next long-term rental or vacation rental? Need capital for a new construction project? Look no further. RCN Capital has you covered. As the leading nationwide lender for real estate investors, RCN Capital offers short-term and long-term financing solutions for your next investment property. RCN Capital takes a common-sense approach to your loan request, offering high leverages and low rates backed by superior customer service. Whether you're investing in single-family properties or multifamily properties across the U.S., RCN Capital has funding options for you with no hoops to jump through and quick closings in as little as 2 weeks. Ready to get a quote for your next investment property? Visit rcncapital.com/podcast to apply today. There is no fee to apply. Again, that's rcncapital.com/podcast to apply today.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Harridge. I'm still here with the Colonel, sir. Let's dive right in to that age-old argument of leaders are born, not created. And I never forget, I was at this conference and someone said, I'm not a motivational speaker because you can motivate a bunch of idiots and they won't be good at anything. So sometimes the people that I think you hear, you said born leader, it's the people that are very motivating. They command the room. But if they don't know what they're talking about and they don't know how to train someone, you were just talking about training, they're just going to have a bunch of idiots running into the wrong wall. Exactly. Could you talk about maybe some of the ways that we can become better leaders?
You know, a lot of it's just through simple work. Like you study and you get better, you know, at being a real estate professional or whatever the case may be. I think leadership is just like that. It is a skill. You know, working in corporate America, when I did, so many young people want to be leaders. Well, how can you be a leader? Go volunteer for something work in a civic club, work on a project, take that leadership role. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you will become at being in charge. So often where people are just afraid to take that first step. And I think that's the hardest part. And once you start doing things as a leader, whether it's in a civic organization, your church or school, you fill in the blank, it just brings out something. You just grow.
Yeah, you hear all these, and I'm not even sure if it's true, that people say, the largest common denominator of Fortune 500 CEOs is they were in the United States Marine Corps, or they played college football or college sports or football, one or the other. And I think about the people I know that have done that, and there's obviously leaders there. But then I dial back my time in the Corps. They have NCO school. They have these, what they call the books that you had to do for credit, the military training. MCIs. And there's all these things that were taught from day one. The JJ did tie buckle. And let's just, and I want to talk about mentorship too, because I think that's just been huge in my success, both in the Corps and after. But if they're out there and they're alone as an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? So how does someone realize they're in a situation where maybe they need to work on their leadership skills instead of their maybe technical skills?
I think we all need a feedback network. And I've told my wife, we were talking about this recently, it was so great in the Marine Corps. I always had an executive officer, number 2 guy, had a sergeant major or a first sergeant, but senior folks that would sit down and would tell me when I was off base. And I could vent, I could talk to, but I knew at the end of the day, they would always be honest with me.
From different perspectives too.
Different perspectives. And would show me things. We all have blinders on. And that was so invaluable. I think I took a lot of that for granted. Now being out of the Marine Corps, my wife is the XO, the sergeant major, and everything. But how valuable.
And your CO.
And the CO, absolutely. But I think in our professional lives and our personal lives, we need a network of people. Not that's going to always tell us yes, not that is always going to agree with us, but folks are going to give us that real unfiltered feedback. And I think we need that, and I think we need to cultivate that.
I'll never forget, in Okinawa, Japan, Lieutenant Duckworth showed up and told us he did not care how things were done before. We don't do a thing unless he tells us to. And as the sergeant, I said, Roger that. Well, the next day, the colonel was expecting his briefing, and it wasn't ready. I had a direct order from the lieutenant saying, don't do a thing if I don't tell you. And so you can imagine the Lieutenant Colonel Cabillo did not come into my office wondering where his briefing was. He went to Lieutenant Duckworth. Lieutenant Duckworth went over to that gunnery sergeant, the senior enlisted that you were talking about. And at that time, those 3 worked out what the lieutenant had done wrong as a young leader. And the colonel came down, and they all came down to my office looking for the briefing. And, of course, I had it ready. I just didn't go to it because I was told not to. So, anyway, we worked it out. But I think sometimes people mistake, you said before the break, dictatorship. People will mistake leadership for authority.
Right.
Could you talk about ways that you learned maybe how to be less authoritative but more of a leader?
I think the more you can share that authority, I think the better your team is. Crazy thing. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I'll give you an example. I did a tour of recruiting duty. What in the world do I know about recruiting? So I'm the new guy, and what I had to do is I had to get my Marines who had been on recruiting duty to teach me. I had to learn. And that process of trusting them to teach me, listening to what they taught me, and then using that brought us together. It made it a really tight organization. And conversely with that, it built up my level of confidence with how good they were. And I felt very comfortable giving that away. Go, make a decision. I trust you. You know what to do. Go do it. And I find the more you can give that away, the better that organization is. People have buy-in. It's not mine. It's ours. Right. I just happen to have this role, but it's our team, and our team is unstoppable.
So oftentimes in the various leadership roles I've had, whether I'll never forget, I was the platoon sergeant, I don't remember, platoon leader at Intel school because I'd been there so long because I had a surgery while I was there. And here I am, I'm 18, 19 years old, and I've got 35 people that I'm commanding and marching to and from school every day. And I'll never forget when this high school football coach, last name was Arnett. I can't remember, Jamie, if I remember correctly. He had been a high school football coach, was inspired to join. He's 30-something years old, barely under the age limit. And he's like, I want you to know that you inspire me, and I would follow you anywhere. So coming from 2 years before, that's the way I felt about my high school football coach.
Right.
Like, and I just remember thinking, like, I haven't done anything. Like, what? But when you look back, what it was as a leader, I've always felt like my job was to be there if they needed me, and like you said, to trust them to do what they knew to do.
Right.
It almost rely on your training and let me know if I can help,
Right.
kind of thing.
You know, it's interesting. I think so often people just say, go do it, and I'm going to delegate hands off. No, it's not that simple. I have a responsibility to you to make sure you're trained. You know how to do that job, that task, whatever. And then I need to teach you, which I think is the next level above training. And teaching you is not teaching you what decisions to make, but helping you learn how to make decisions and understand the why. And then the last T is trust. I trust you to go do it. And of course, early on, we have some guardrails. You know, here's your decisions in between here and here. And if it's outside of that, let's talk about it. And as you go and as we get more and more comfortable, those guardrails get further and further apart. And I think sometimes we throw people to the wolves and then they fail, but we did not set them up for success. I think that's the leader's role, you know, and it may be a little bit more hands-on initially, but ultimately we want to be out of the job. I want you to be so good that you don't need me. You just go do it.
I've been very guilty in my 22-year entrepreneurial career journey of delegation by abdication, right? Great. I hired this new person to do this. Good luck. And then inevitably you're unhappy with the performance.
Right.
Right? Because they're not doing it right, or it wasn't done the way I wanted it. And ultimately, like, you learn to look at the man in the mirror and you kind of maybe you should have taught them how to log into the server if you expected them to log into the server, right? Like, it's kind of funny. A good leader is, in essence, a good mentor. Is that kind of the parallel I'm drawing here?
It is. I think a good leader is a good teacher, a good mentor. You have to be able to teach and help people grow. I mean, that's the essence. And if you're not developing and growing people, it's just you and a bunch of people to nod their heads.
Right.
And so you're given direction, but you're not really developing a team. You're certainly not developing people. And you think about all that talent that's just there being unused, and all these people that see things that you as a leader don't see because you're not doing that specific job every day. Gosh, if you can harness that, if you can teach and train and develop people.
You know, I think about, like, my current situation, RCN Capital. Jeff Tesh, the CEO, is my boss.
Right.
He's also my partner. And we talk about these things all the time. And it's funny. I think we mentor each other. Like, even though he's the CEO.
Right.
But he is a great leader and I'm a great leader, and we have these different styles. But I feel like that dialogue back and forth, you call it the feedback loop, not the OODA loop. We'll get that feedback loop.
Right.
How important is, I feel like I'm just now coming up with this. That's probably one of the most important parts.
I think it's tremendously valuable. If I'm not getting that feedback from somewhere, where am I going to get it? How am I ever going to improve? And I think as human beings, we're sometimes reluctant to ask for feedback because we love the good feedback, but we don't like the feedback that's really important.
Right.
And it's sometimes that negative feedback that we need to hear to grow from.
Well, I was telling our chief technology officer the other day, brilliant man. I said, we got to get you out of the CRM. And he's like, I just love it. Like, I told him, I said, in your prior life, you must have been a sales process engineer because he really does love it. Like, he's great at it. And I was thinking earlier when you said something, is there such a thing as a team that is too small to be developing leadership?
No.
I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs, they think, well, there's just 2 of us, or there's just 3 of us. When we get bigger, we'll worry about that. And I feel like that may be what stops people from ever getting bigger.
You know, that tremendously insightful. I think you're right. We get so caught up, like we talked about earlier, doing, I got to do it now. But if you don't ever stop and invest in yourself and invest in your team, whether it's 2 people or 20 people, you're going to be capped.
Right.
There's only so far that you can go. And I think you have to look at it as if it is an investment. And sometimes it might not be a tangible investment, but that intangible far exceeds the tangible.
I'll never forget, we're sitting around a board table, and this had to be 2014, 2015. And at that time, we're in the throes of it. We had just started this big company with Blackstone and very high pressure situation. Almost would have rather been back in Kosovo. It was really stressful. And I'll never forget Catherine Briggs, the chief operating officer, at the end of the table. She goes, we're not saving lives here. And I mean, Colonel, it hit me like a ton of bricks because I was taking myself really seriously at that time. I kind of leaned back and I'm like, she's right. Like, we're not, like, if we don't get this done tonight, like, there's not a platoon of people that die.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, there's nobody bleeding out on the floor right now. And I think entrepreneurs, big and small, sometimes it feels like life or death.
Right.
But it's not.
Yeah. You know, you made me think back to when I was in Afghanistan. We were just going just hard at it. And I was going to bed at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was talking to people. I ran operations for a 20,000 person multinational force. So you can imagine, busy. You're planning and executing these operations. And I was just worn out. Wasn't thinking clearly, et cetera. And I don't think that's any different than business. You can go so far, and that candle is going to burn down. If you don't take care of yourself and have a reasonable, steady pace that's maintainable, you might go off like a rocket, but that rocket's going to burn out pretty quickly. And I think that's applicable in everything that we do.
Those rockets always seem to crash down, don't they?
They do, and they crash hard.
You know, I talk a lot in every business I've been involved in about the fog of war.
Right.
And all too often, we're so focused on that thing in front of us that we just don't even see, I would say, what else is going on around us, but also the effects of our actions. And I'm sure in Afghanistan, that was a big part of it. Can you talk about, and I want to transition a little bit to some practical application of things, but could you just spend about a minute talking about maybe traps, leadership traps, like things that people let themselves get into and maybe ways to identify it?
I shared a story about this yesterday. The first, let's talk about ego, and a quick story.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, now I'm in this role, midway through. I'm now the operations officer. Dream come true.
Are you full bird at the time?
I'm just promoted as a colonel, so junior colonel.
But the full bird's the full bird.
Right.
I mean, that's command staff.
Right. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But dream job. Always wanted to be a platoon commander in combat. I got to do that right out early on. And then, everybody wants to be the operations officer, running the operations of a large organization in combat. And here I was. So I flew from from where we were at Camp Leatherneck to meet the Brits at their compound in a place called Lashkargah. Had this meeting, and it's like a fort, the mud forts. And I needed to go meet with Afghan National Police. And their place was just down the street, maybe half a mile, and the dirt streets, the walled-in fort kind of the compounds that they had. And I thought, I don't need to take the security detachment. I don't need that. I am in charge. I am going to walk down there like I own the place. And so I started walking. So I start walking down the mud street, dirt street. And about halfway there, it hit me how stupid I was. And I thought, oh, my Lord, if a carload of Taliban or bad guys came by, they started shooting, I might get one or two, but I might get one or two, and that was it. I was done.
You might get one or two in your body, too.
Right. And then I thought, that's the best thing that could happen. That would be the absolute best thing that happened. The worst thing is they captured me. And I thought, what would that look like to our country? It's here, American colonel, United States Marine, captured by the Taliban. How would that look? And then I started thinking about our mission, the NATO mission. What would that do, and how would that impact? Then I thought about the Marine Corps, and we love the Marine Corps. I thought, oh my gosh, I'd be that guy. And then I thought about my family. And I thought, oh my gosh. Well, I made it there and back safely, but I realized as leaders, sometimes we get so caught up that we put our ego in front of the organization or in front of the mission, just like I did. Thank God nothing happened. But what a lesson to learn. And I don't think we're ever too old to learn as leaders. We're always doing things that we can learn from. But, we think we're doing the right things sometimes, and maybe we're not.
That's an excellent spot for us to take a break. So stick around. We'll be right back.
REI Inc. is a monthly business publication for real estate investors, covering all types of real estate investments and strategies. It is the most comprehensive real estate investment publication on the market. All of the articles are written by the top leaders in the industry, so investors are assured of always getting the best information possible. Each month, REI Inc. also profiles the top companies in the industry and provides insights and data into key regional markets. Along with their sister platforms, the REI Referral Network and Highest Invest, real estate investors have exclusive access to off-market investment opportunities and national acquisition and disposition initiatives. To learn more, visit www.rei-inc.com, where you can also access the REI Referral Network. Also, be sure and visit www.highest-and-vest.com to view the latest exclusive off-market assets with near immediate acceptance decisions and closing strategies. You can also email marketing@rei-referralnetwork.com to request more information.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Herridge. I'm still here with the Colonel. So the next segment is the Money Minute. So imagine there's an entrepreneur out there that this is the only 60 seconds of advice they're going to receive all month. And it can be, some people talk to their younger self. Some people talk to the audience they have. But just there's an investor, an entrepreneur, a young person, an older person that feels a little lost. Dive into your experience. Dive into who you are. 60 seconds. The go juice. You ready?
Let's do it. I think you got to look at your values and align your values with your vision, with your plan, and your execution. As business owners, as entrepreneurs, we often dive into one of these. Often it's planning. But if they are not connected, if your values don't tie to your vision and your vision isn't tied to your plan, and ultimately if you're not executing and having a place to go back, and you talked about the OODA loop, if you're not reassessing and adjusting that plan, you've totally missed it. But you've got to get those things aligned. They've got to get connected. And I think the bottom line is everything you do has to tie back to those values. And if it doesn't tie back to those values and vision aren't connected, you're going to go off course, and it's hard to recorrect that.
So stop motivating me. You get me all jazzed up here. The Marine Corps has been a great part of my life, and I did an interview actually on this stage on someone else's podcast, and ultimately that was the turning point for me. I mean, I have an older brother that, I think he's 40, what am I? He's probably 46, 47, at least 30 years of his life inside behind bars, right? And a younger brother that followed me to the core, even though he was just a reservist. But hey, he tried. When you look at it, like the thing that's different about me was that decision. And I feel like the thing that's different about me in business ultimately is that decision. The things that I learned about inspiring people, about leading people, about having core values, about being accountable. It's more than I could ever teach from a stage, because if you don't live it, you can't absorb it.
Right.
But now here we are. Clearly you're not leading men in Afghanistan, but you're going around, you're consulting, you're helping teach people about leadership and organizational culture, or running their organization. Could we talk maybe for a couple minutes about some tactical advice that you have for entrepreneurs out there, where they can maybe identify things they may not be doing right and fix it, or they can find things they're doing right and do more of it? It can be leadership, it can be a value board, like whatever, just anything. You spend a couple minutes just telling people what you think they should be doing in their business.
I didn't fully appreciate this in the Marine Corps. And we're always talking, your buddy's giving you feedback, whether you want it or not. But it's always a friendly competition. You want to run faster than me, I want to run faster than you. But we would go out and we would train together, and we would push to make each other better. And I think after getting out of the Marine Corps, I missed that. And I didn't realize how much we did that. You'd pick up a phone and call a peer and say, hey, I got a problem. What are you doing? And I don't see that so much in corporate America. I don't see that so much in the entrepreneur and the private business. And I think if we can develop that network, and networking, we talk about it a lot, but really networking is more than just having a beer with the guys. It's having a network of people, like-minded people who give you feedback, who will share ideas, and that you trust. And you'll share your ideas because you're not worried about them taking that idea away from you. It's like, hey, let's do something together. How can this help you, and how can you help me? And it's like finding a friend. When you find that kind of person that you can share things with, open kimono, that is worth its weight in gold.
So many veterans struggle with a lack of structure once they leave the service. And as a business owner, I've really struggled hiring vets, specifically Marines.
Right.
I think they expect too much out of me. And I was talking to some West Point grads. They were running an investment business in Nashville last week. I said, the problem is you're not translating your values to your current situation. What I learned is in the military, it's all about, the fundamentals of Marine Corps leadership, mission accomplishment and troop welfare, right? But the mission's first. That doesn't translate well to a civilian job, because as the business owner, frankly, keeping the business in business has to come first, right? Not providing great customer service always. And when you start sharing this profit first mentality, or it's very, the whole leaders eat last sometimes doesn't work in small business. And I think a lot of vets struggle with that. How would one go about creating their value set in a private enterprise?
I don't think it's really that different. I think, good leadership, good processes, operational processes, things like that. I think they translate from the different services to corporate America, to private industry, to entrepreneurship. I think we struggle when we try to make it different. Those things that made you successful will continue to make you successful. You just might need to speak a different language. The words are the same, but it might be a little different language. You might need to tone it down a little bit. Maybe some of the phrases that you and I just rattle off might not be the most appropriate phase in a meeting, but the intent is there.
Did my wife call you?
We had a little chatter.
I hear that one all the time. Like, take it down a notch, Tim.
You know, it's funny though. I thought about leadership, and I had an incredible meeting one night in the Pentagon. It's a fairly long story, so I'll kind of give you a synopsis. We had something that was ultimately my responsibility, and it was due to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at 4:00 in the afternoon. We started on it at 4:00 in the afternoon. You can imagine the adult supervision that was going on. In our team, we looked like Santa's workshop on Christmas Eve. It was a flurry of activity. We finished this project about 9:00 at night. And the J3 at this time was General Joe Dunford, who went on to become the chairman. Just an incredible leader, Marine. And this was my first interaction with it. So here I am, 5+ hours late with something that was going to the chairman. And ultimately, here's the rest of the story, it was going to the president the next day. So a little bit of angst in getting this thing done, right?
So not just writing a point paper.
No.
Rather important. Rather important.
No. So it's time to take this to him. It's finally done. We put the package in a sealed envelope. That sealed envelope goes into a locked package, zipped, locked. And so I take it to our intermediate boss, which is a 1-star general in a different service. I give him the package, and he looks at me and he says, "Do you think I'm going to take this to an angry Marine general?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Why, yes, sir, I do."
That's my oath.
And he looks, and I say, "I'll take it," thinking that no, I got it. He said, "Yes, you will." I thought, oh, my God. And I felt like I was walking the Green Mile.
Yeah.
And so I had met General Dunford, great reputation, but we had never worked together. And other than just a quick greeting, that was it. So here's my first interaction with this guy. And I thought I was done. I thought I was just done. So I walk in. Everybody's gone out of the outer office. He's in the back office by himself at a stand-up desk, one light on. And as I walk in, he looks up. First thing he says, "Is this your best work?" How do you answer that? No, sir. He said, "Well, come over here. Let's take a look at it." Tim, we spent 30 minutes. So we went through this page by page by page. He kept the chairman waiting an additional 30 minutes on a Friday night. And he taught me what was important, how it would be used, and why it was important. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he didn't holler. At the end of that, we packaged it back up, and I thought, okay, here it comes. I'm that guy, taking it down the hallway to the chairman. He said, "Ted, I got it." He took it. Moral courage. You can talk about leadership all day long. That is leadership in a nutshell.
Right.
That's just special.
And you weren't in the room with him, but you can almost guarantee he didn't walk in and say, "That Studdard guy just now brought this to me."
No, he took it. He owned it.
Right.
And that's what leaders do. That's just leadership 101. And I think that's just a special thing when you get to experience that.
Tone, inflection, guidance. I think with our families, with our coworkers, it's just one of those things that we used to say a lot in Little League sports. These kids aren't going to remember which games they won and lost, but they are definitely going to remember the way you made them feel.
It's funny. So the rest of that story is we didn't know that we would work together for 2 more years, or that would be the big boss when I was in Afghanistan. So we built a relationship. If he yelled, screamed, hollered, stuttered you, SOB, we wouldn't have had any sort of relationship. But the way he handled that enabled us to build a relationship, which bled over into combat 2.5 years later. I knew what he needed, how he would use it, and why it was important.
And he knew he could trust you to be honest with him.
Exactly. And the last piece of this, I think that we sometimes miss. We can yell and scream and holler. I could do things as a young Marine that I really couldn't do as a captain. I could do things as a captain I couldn't do as a major, and I certainly couldn't do as a colonel. That doesn't mean things that are important change, but how you react and how your demeanor matters.
And how you're perceived.
Exactly. And if you run around like you're a crazed lunatic yelling, screaming, hollering. People turn that off. It just doesn't work. I found the higher you go, the more you have to tone it down a little bit. People are already afraid of you, just because of the position that you hold. You don't think of yourself as special, but I guarantee you, a lot of folks that fall under that umbrella of your leadership certainly do. And if you don't tone that down, if you don't back that off, people will never approach you.
So when I found out I was getting promoted to corporal, we were on the 31st MU off the coast of Indonesia or East Timor doing an operation called Operation Stabilize. This had to be, I have no idea, something. No, 90-something, because I don't know one. So, yeah, 90-something. Or as my son calls the olden days, last century, Dad.
Right.
And Corporal Dennis was this guy that I just really looked up to. And I went up to him and said, I just don't know if I'm going to be a good corporal. He goes, it's easy. I said, what do you mean it's easy? Like, be an NCO, get the blood stripe, the sword. He goes, look, think about every corporal or sergeant that you've ever worked with and just do two things. Try to be like the parts you liked and do your damnedest not to be the parts that you didn't like.
Exactly.
He goes, and you will find your style. And that advice, and I wish I could find it. Biggest wish ever is that I wish we'd had Facebook back then.
Oh, yeah.
Because all the people that I connected with and just that you go to war with, literally and figuratively, like there's no way to find them, right? Like you try to look up a last name Dennis in Marine Corps, like, yeah, good luck. But it was interesting. Like that's guided me, right? Like, and my wife will even remind me of the story because she'll hear me getting on to someone. And she'll be like, now look, is that the guy that you would try to be like or the guy that you would try to not be like? And I kind of, dial it back a little. And
right.
With my kids especially, because I scare them, but they also idolize me simultaneously. And I got to tell you this story, then I'm going to let you wrap up. A couple weeks ago, I noticed my youngest son was starting to wear, he got these old green sweats with the little USMC logo right here, right? Like they're 20-something years old. Got the old gray hoodie with Marines across the front that, 20-something years old. And I've got one of those beanies that has the Marine Corps logo on the front. And I noticed my youngest son, he's 13, had been wearing it a lot, like just a lot. And I said one day, son, it makes me very proud the way you wear that because of me. And he goes, well, Dad, I've decided you may have to salute me one day. I said, what? He goes, well, if I don't make the major leagues or NFL, I've decided I'm going to be a Marine Corps officer. Well, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Like, I've never once pushed my children towards the Corps. I've never once pushed them towards service, really, other than service of the community. And, man, I was proud and scared at the same time, right? Like, it was, I told my wife, she's like, oh, heck, but I think that's, to me, ultimately what you just said. I mean, I've shown him that it was a great thing for me. I've shown him that it's helped me, and he wants to do it without me telling him.
Right.
And I guess that's pat myself on the back. I must have done something right there. So why don't you take us home? Tell us kind of what you're doing now, how people can do business with you, how they can connect with you. I think you have a book.
I do. I certainly do.
Tell us all that about that.
All right, I will. But before we get there, I've got a young son that's a Lance Corporal. And at 12 or 13 years old, he was wearing those Marine Corps T-shirts. And I never thought a thing about it until he called me one day and says, Dad, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. Proudest day of my life.
That's right.
So no telling where that's going to take.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man. So as far as the book, it's called Depot to Depot. And when I got into corporate America with Home Depot, it asked me to start doing speaking. So I spoke to groups all over the country, leadership groups, professional athletes, different Home Depot groups. And I started getting some, I don't want to say silly questions, but questions that people really didn't understand Tim and Ted. They knew that Tim and Ted were Marines, but They thought you're either Forrest Gump or a crazy drill instructor.
Yeah.
And, that's unfortunately true of what a lot of people think. And it was like we're missing the boat. So corporate America didn't understand us. And when I say us, the value that veterans bring, I think is tremendous. And veterans also didn't understand corporate America and didn't know how to relate, how to do that transition, ultimately a transformation back, into a civilian. And there's so much talent there, and there's so much need for that talent in corporate America and American business. And you got this group that wants to leverage that talent. And so I wrote Depot to Depot to help both of those groups hopefully understand each other a little bit better and to connect.
So to translate the title, you talk about Marine Corps Recruit Depot to the Home Depot.
There you go. There you go. And so, and all profits of that go to help Marines and service members that are in transition. So, just a wonderful thing. It's given me an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about what folks like you and I have to offer, and I think it's tremendous. And that's what we're also trying to do with the company, with the Studdard Company, is help take 35 years of leadership experience in corporate America and the Marine Corps, leading large organizations and developing people and building teams, and bring that to folks who just haven't had that experience. We have so much talent. It's incredible the talent that we have in American businesses, but we don't tap that talent like we could because we don't develop people. We don't know how to plan, and we're afraid sometimes to bring the team together to plan. So we help teach people how to build that synergy and bring their team together and leverage that talent. And it is an incredible journey, loving every minute of it.
And if someone's out there thinking, I have a large team, I'd love this message to be conveyed, how do they connect?
Just look us up, The Studdard Company. That is it, thestuddardcompany.com. And would love to talk with you, of course, on LinkedIn and Ted Studdard.
I've got, I will make sure that we put all that in the show notes. And if you're out there listening and you want a copy of the book, hit me up. We'll get you a copy of it. And then you're good friends with the publisher of REI Inc. magazine.
I am.
Bob Rakowski. Bob and I have become friends over the last decade or so. They're sponsors of the show. Actually, that's their show. We sponsor it. So I really appreciate you making time in your schedule to come sit down with us here in Dallas.
It's absolutely a privilege to be here. My hat's off to you. I love what you're doing, and congratulations on this tremendous success.
Well, Colonel, thank you.
Semper Fi, Marine.
For being here. If you don't know what that means, you just need to educate yourself. But we're out of time. That's it for today. Thank you for stopping back by. Remember, your network is your net worth, and today you've been growing both. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.